You want to know what the best neighborhoods in the Twin Cities is? Stick around. Come hang out and, you know, let's do the thing. What's up, y'all? It's Jesse Lynch. If you've watched this channel before, you know that I'm a real estate agent here, and you also maybe noticed that I got a new camera. Pretty excited about it. Don't know how it's gonna work out exactly, but I think it's gonna be pretty cool. Today's video is basically just what are the best neighborhoods in the Twin Cities. There's a whole lot of them. All right, let's dive into this map. I'm gonna show you the 11 best neighborhoods in the Twin Cities, and I promise there is a lot more content to come on this, and I won't steer you wrong. Let's go. All right, y'all, diving into this map of the Twin Cities, and obviously they're not divided like this, although there is, between a lot of this, there's the river, so maybe this is sort of accurate, but I just took these two graphics, put them next to each other, and they're probably not exactly to scale, but that doesn't matter. So, and there is a river between the two for the most part. So really, I'm gonna say the top 11 communities in the Twin Cities, not neighborhoods, and then down the road, I will do the best neighborhoods in those communities. But I do think that a lot of, if you're looking up other information, a lot of what you'll read about neighborhoods, very often it will be sort of these bigger things, and then within these communities are all these other neighborhoods. So people talk about Northeast as being a really popular place, right? But there's so many different neighborhoods in Northeast. But for the sake of this video, to make it not 4 hours long, I will just talk about the communities, and then down the road, I promise I'll do way more immersive, specific to these neighborhoods. But after watching this, you'll decide what neighborhoods sound like they're up your alley, and then you can just go watch the few that are, right? So hopefully that helps you out. Anyways, this has been fun to make so far. So, okay. That being said, I'm going to start with Northeast. Northeast is where my brokerage is, and I have lived in Northeast, and it's here, right? It has arrived. It's become a very trendy place. It's like an arts district, a ton of breweries, really great restaurants and stores, and it is a really good place to live. It's a very desired place now, and the beauty of it is that it's growing and that there is still houses that you can buy in here that don't cost a ton, and I think the values will be going up here over time. And what separates Northeast from Camden and near North, which sometimes you'll just hear people calling this North, and that is kind of a thing. People tend to consider this whole thing North Minneapolis. But what divides Northeast from those two is the river. The river goes right down here. There's a few bridges that go across it, like Broadway and Lowry. And the river comes here, comes down here, which this is basically downtown. This is the St. Anthony main neighborhood, and the river kind of runs through there as well. And my brokerage sits basically right in here at Broadway, and Central goes all the way. And Central basically just turns into Highway 65, which goes into the suburbs, and then even further up than that. Okay, and as far as the general demographic of who would live in Northeast, it's gonna be maybe 25 to 40-year-old single guy, single gal, or married couple, maybe with a kid or two. That, I would say, overwhelmingly, that is what you're gonna find here. And that's really who this neighborhood is kind of ideal for, with the breweries and the relative conveniences close to downtown, that kind of thing. Good neighborhoods, good food, good drinks. Okay, and for the record, this is not in order of what is best, and there is no way to do that, because they're all different, right? It's for different people are gonna like different things, right? Different strokes for different folks. And so I'm just going down the list in a way that makes sense as far as like geography goes. But so I'm not saying Northeast is the #1 best neighborhood or the 11th either. I'm just kind of doing it in a way that makes sense to me. So the next one I'm gonna say is Central, which, to be frank, I have never heard it called Central. I think of it more as downtown. Downtown is basically here, and it's all the skyscrapers and all that kind of thing. And then there's neighborhoods like North Loop, Marcy Homes, probably Loring Park they're considering here. Okay, and then as far as the demographic that might be most drawn to the central area, the downtown area, it's probably going to be business professionals. At the end of the day, people who don't want to drive very far who work downtown and who like a very, very walkable area. You're probably going to have to be paying for underground parking or a lot parking, that kind of thing. There's not much in the way of just free parking lots, but if you're parking underground, right, under your condo or whatever, and you can walk just about anywhere, then the central downtown Loring Park, that whole area is going to be a really great place for that kind of person. But if at the end of the day, you can drive into your underground garage and then not have to drive at all, and you can walk to work, you can walk to the grocery store, you can walk to Target and Target Corporate, by the way. You can walk to bars and restaurants and nightlife and that kind of thing. This place is going to be ideal for that kind of person who wants to park their car and walk or bike just about everywhere. Okay, then we're going to hop over to Calhoun and Lake of the Isles. Calhoun was actually the name of a lake in this area. It was called Lake Calhoun, but it was named after a soldier, and they have since turned it back to Bedamakaska, which was sort of its original Native American name, which is, I think, something that we've done throughout the city. There's certain things where there's these nods to Native American things. I think they're great. Nokomis, Minnehaha, they're great. And so now Calhoun and Lake of the Isles, really it's Bedamakaska and Lake of the Isles, and then there's also Lake Harriet is another one. Okay, as far as the kind of people that tend to be drawn toward Calhoun and Lake of the Isles, that's basically, I would say that's a pretty even split between younger middle-aged families with growing kids, right? And they're going to live typically in, say, like the Kenwood neighborhood and the Kingfield neighborhood and that kind of thing. And then kind of more in this area, that's going to be more like the uptown area. You're going to find the young professional who wants to live somewhere trendy, somewhere walkable, and with some nightlife and some bars and that kind of thing. And then there's going to be students who live over here and here as well. And generally, as a rule, the further this way you get in these neighborhoods, the more affordable the houses are going to be. And I'm going to bring that down into Southwest, which I'm calling the next best neighborhood in the Twin Cities. Southwest has some of the best schools, and I don't know if you watched the other video about cost of living, but Edina is right over here. Edina is the most expensive first-ring suburb in the entire Twin Cities. If you've seen the Mighty Ducks, that's where the term cake eater comes from. No hate on Edina, just telling you that is where that term comes from. And Southwest is a great neighborhood. It's actually where my mom grew up, and the houses here are beautiful. It is a relatively peaceful place in the cities. There's great schools like South and Southwest, and the Tangletown neighborhood is super cool. Just this really interesting, unique, they call it Tangletown because if you look at a map, it looks crazy. It looks like tangled hair, right? It's pretty hard to wrap your head around, but that's because the landscape, and they worked around the landscape, and so it's not just a standard grid in here, right? And now that I think about it, Lake Harriet might be considered, and not Calhoun, Lake of the Isles. That would make sense, given that it doesn't say Harriet, but nonetheless, Lake Harriet is a beautiful lake. This whole chain of lakes, these 3 lakes, people will run around the whole thing or bike around the whole thing. It's really great. Okay, and as far as who's going to be living in the Southwest neighborhood, I'm going to say overwhelmingly that is going to be families with pretty good income. I don't know enough about what kind of income they're going to be making. There are great schools. It is a quiet neighborhood, and yeah, this is a great place to live, great place to raise kids, and it is priced accordingly. That brings us to the next best neighborhood, which is Nokomis. And Nokomis is an absolutely beautiful lake. Again, really, really great neighborhood. For lack of a better term, it is very neighborhoody. There are a ton of houses. There are some businesses, some very great small businesses in here, but overwhelmingly, I don't know that there's like a single chain store in this whole area, other than maybe gas stations and that kind of thing. I suppose there's a Starbucks down here, but where isn't there a Starbucks? These houses are great. This area is going to be more affordable than this area, and the houses are going to be somewhat comparable. We have a huge craftsman type of architecture to our houses, and the Nokomis area has really great display of that kind of house. And basically Highway 62 runs right here. 35W shares like a commons area right here, curves there. And then sort of the other main highway that comes here is Highway 77. Right along here, basically what splits Nokomis from Longfellow is Hiawatha, which is also called just 55, which is also where the light rail runs. And the kind of people that are going to be living in the Nokomis neighborhood, to be frank, not a whole lot different than the people living in Southwest, except these houses are going to generally be more affordable than just across 35. And kind of the further this way you get, the cheaper the houses are going to get, because right over here is the airport. And so probably a sweet spot of the most expensive houses in the Nokomis area, kind of being right in the middle, and then maybe even as you begin to border Southwest. And then again, probably right over here too, as you get close to the Minnehaha Falls, it's going to start to get more expensive. But there's a fair amount of people who rent over here, and a fair amount of families and young people who own houses over here. And again, it's a great neighborhood, relatively peaceful, and I would say a great place to raise kids. Great place even to just be a single person. It's a very nice place to live. Okay, and that brings us to the next neighborhood, which is the Longfellow Neighborhood. Longfellow basically is anything east of Hiawatha, Highway 55, and probably south of 94. Can't be totally sure about that, but that's kind of my best guess. And Longfellow is home to probably one of the most beautiful natural attractions of the Twin Cities, which is Minnehaha Falls. It's a beautiful area, beautiful park. Obviously, there's a waterfall. It's beautiful. There's a ton of just bike paths around here, a lot of area for people to hang out. There's even a disc golf course in the Minnehaha Park. And Minnehaha Park basically runs all the way over to the river, and then there's just this beautiful view over here. There is a main bridge, which is 46th, that runs here into Highland Park, and then it turns into Ford Parkway over here, which is where a huge Ford plant used to be, but is no longer, basically after the 2007 crisis. But I think they're going to turn that into some probably condos or something like that. But it's definitely an area that is ripe to be developed. Okay, now the demographic that you're going to find in Longfellow, it's going to be pretty similar to maybe what you would find in Nokomis. And it's going to be younger families and maybe even starting to be older families as well. And it's more affordable here typically than say Southwest or Calhoun, Lake of the Isles. It's generally, I would say, a little bit quieter. There's not as much as in the way of like nightlife and that kind of thing. More people who just want a nice neighborhood to live in. Still very bikeable. Still some really great restaurants in here. But overwhelmingly, we're talking just houses. Just house upon house upon house all throughout here, with a couple sort of main streets with some great restaurants on them. That brings us to the next best neighborhood, which is Highland Park. Highland Park is a beautiful neighborhood. Okay, and as far as demographic of who tends to be drawn towards McAllister Groveland, overwhelmingly during the school year, there's going to be a lot of students in the sort of apartment buildings over here. But there are these really, really great little pockets of neighborhoods throughout here that are real peaceful. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of renters going on around there. A lot of the single family homes are probably renters as well. But nonetheless, they are great homes, and they are beginning to add some things like condos and bigger sort of apartment buildings over here as well. And in those neighborhoods, you're probably going to find younger families with kids. Okay, and that's going to bring me to the next neighborhood, which is a pretty small neighborhood, but man, it is a beautiful neighborhood with really, really great homes, and that is Summit Hill. And Summit Avenue that runs all the way through here, basically, more or less it runs into West 7th. That has the governor's mansion. It basically has some of the most beautiful homes in the entire Twin Cities, and they're all historic for the most part. I'm sure there's some new ones, but they're these beautiful, beautiful historic mansions. And then just one street south is Grand, which is where a ton of really, trendy shops and that kind of thing. And those tend to be more in this side, more in the Summit Hill area than the Mac Groveland area. This is more of the college area. And then right around Grand and Lexington, right over here, is where it starts to get really trendy and with a lot of great shops and great food and that kind of thing. The demographic for the Summit Hill area, it's pretty varied. I'd say it's some of the most wealthy people in the state probably at certain parts along Summit and that kind of thing. But then maybe the further north you go, the further towards West 7th you go, it starts to get quite a bit more affordable, and even maybe a little less quiet, a little less neighborhoody. Okay, and then the next neighborhood that I'm gonna say is the next best neighborhood is this downtown area. And I will say that this neighborhood is changing a ton, and it can be a little bit hard to get a read on what part you would actually want to live in or not. But this neighborhood, because it's where downtown is, right? It's where a bunch of the biggest employers in the cities are, and there's really beautiful architecture down here. I will say some of the old historic Saint Paul skyscrapers are some of my favorite architecture in the whole Twin Cities. And the Lower Town neighborhood is here, which is changing a ton. Again, that's where my band used to practice, and then basically it just got too nice to be having people playing rock music till midnight. And there's a beautiful farmers market here, and this area is really, really changing. But it's definitely, it can be a little touch and go, right? So don't just dive in there willy-nilly. Definitely make sure you have a good sense of where you want to be living around here. And who's going to be living in downtown? Overwhelmingly, it's going to be like young professionals, couples who want to live in a downtown. Maybe they want like a cool apartment with a beautiful city view, but they don't want sort of quite the hustle and bustle and nightlife that you would see over in downtown Minneapolis. Downtown Saint Paul, definitely a lot quieter than downtown Minneapolis. It's starting to be a lot more trendy, but now it's more of like the bars and the brew houses. And whereas maybe downtown Minneapolis has clubs, right? There's not many clubs, if any, in downtown Saint Paul. It's definitely a different lifestyle in downtown Saint Paul over downtown Minneapolis. The people who want to live in the city, want to walk, but don't want sort of the chaos of a nightlife, then this could be a really good spot for them. Okay, and the last and final neighborhood that I'm going to say is the best neighborhood in the Twin Cities, and I will say that there are others that I think are great as well, but this list is already getting too long. And so the Como Park neighborhood. This is another one of these lakes where people love to walk around. It's Como Lake, not to be confused with Lake Como, which is in Italy. It's just a really great neighborhood. Como Park is a really beautiful neighborhood. There's like a beautiful arboretum and also even like a zoo with not that many animals and not the most exciting zoo, just for the record. But there's like rides and stuff down here, and it's definitely like a cool place to have a family, cool place to bring your family. Again, the neighborhoods here are real chill and peaceful, beautiful homes and all that kind of thing. And then the kind of people who are going to be living in the Como Park neighborhood, it's going to be families. And it's a great little neighborhood with typically, my experience, I guess what I've seen is somewhat smaller homes, maybe like 2-3 bedroom homes, some really great like tutors and that kind of stuff in this area, but really cute neighborhood, like very walkable, bikeable. And I don't mean in the sense that there's like a lot of shops that you can walk to, but I mean in like a sort of recreational way. This is where people come and they love to just take a stroll or take a bike around the park or that kind of thing. And as we come to the end of the 11 best neighborhoods in the Twin Cities, if you're from here, I want to know what's your favorite neighborhood, right? And if you're not from here, I want to know, maybe you've heard a little bit about St. Anthony Park or Hamlin, or you've seen that houses are cheap in Dayton's Bluff and you want to know what they're about. Get a hold of me. That's all I can say is get a hold of me. I'm happy to talk about this stuff. And I could have literally gone through every neighborhood in this video, but it's already taken a long time. And I want to just highlight the most desirable neighborhoods. And it's partly opinion and it's partly based on blogs and websites and stuff that highlight these different neighborhoods as well. All right, y'all, before you click away, please do me a favor. If you like that video, like it and leave a comment. That is super helpful. It helps more people be able to see these videos. It helps me out and hopefully it helps other people out. I'm doing my best to make the best content about the Twin Cities out there, and I really just want to be a resource for people. So again, just do me a favor, like this video, leave a comment. I want to know, what's your favorite neighborhood in the Twin Cities? The truth is, everybody's going to have a different favorite neighborhood. I want to know what yours is and why. And if you don't live here, what you gotta do is just reach out to me. Call, text, DM, email, whatever way you want to do it, just reach out, and I promise you won't be sorry. I'll do my absolute best for you. All right, thanks so much for watching. Love you. Bye-bye.